Welcome in, fight fans. My name is Carmen Colosimo. We're finally here. It's the big week, the mega fight for the middleweight championship of the world taking place in Las Vegas, Nevada at the T-Mobile Arena between Canelo Alvarez and the middleweight champion, Gennady Golovkin. I usually bring you guys a little series every week called Previews and Predictions where we take a pretty extensive look, preview both fighters, see what they've been through, and then we make a prediction. This week, I had to make another video separate from that to detail both Canelo Alvarez's road to the fight and Gennady Golovkin's road to the fight. Let's waste no further time and hop right into it. We're going to take a look at Canelo Alvarez's path to this fight. We're going to start after the Floyd Mayweather fight. You ask why after the Floyd Mayweather fight? Because that's when we all really started paying attention to Canelo Alvarez, and we wanted to see where he would go after the Floyd Mayweather fight. We wanted to see how he would bounce back. Now, Canelo's first fight after the Floyd Mayweather fight was against Alfred Angulo. That took place the following March after the Floyd Mayweather fight. Some people would say that was the perfect opponent for Canelo Alvarez, Alfred Angulo, guy that comes forward, really likes to bang with you. Definitely a hard puncher, but kind of more of a welcome back fight, some thought, for Canelo. I don't really agree with that. I think Alfred Angulo is a even more deadlier puncher, than a lot of people give him credit for. He hit Canelo with some big shots in that fight, but Canelo Alvarez got out of that fight pretty much unscathed, scoring a stoppage victory in that fight. Now, the next fight after Alfred Angulo was against Erislandy Lara, the Cuban sensation himself. It was a fight that a lot of people told him to avoid. Oscar De La Hoya, seemed like a lot of people in the boxing business. I believe, Richard Schaefer was still with Oscar De La Hoya at the time, and they were both sweating the fact that Canelo Alvarez wanted to get in the ring with Erislandy Lara because they thought Lara would provide some of the same problems that Floyd Mayweather caused Canelo Alvarez. And once the fight took place, it was clear that this was going to be a long night for Canelo. I think Erislandy Lara and a lot of boxing pundits thought that Erislandy Lara outboxed Canelo, won the point fight, but Canelo Alvarez landed the more meaningful blows, and that's what showed on the judges' scorecards. Personally, I'm not sure how Canelo Alvarez got out of that fight with the win, but I'm not a judge. You leave it up to the judges. Canelo Alvarez got the decision victory over Erislandy Lara. Then his next fight took place a week after the biggest disaster in boxing history, which was Mayweather-Pacquiao. That fight took place against James Kirkland at the Houston Astros Park at Minute Maid Park, and boy, what a start to the fight it was. James Kirkland's a very come-forward fighter. Some called him a shot fighter by that point in his career, but he didn't start out the fight looking shot, I'll tell you that. He really hurt Canelo with an uppercut to start out the fight. Canelo weathered the storm, knocked him down with a couple big shots before landing the brutal overhand counterpunch that we all remember the week after the Pacquiao-Mayweather fight when he flattened Kirkland, put him out in front of about 40,000 screaming fans of his own there. And that was a great thing for boxing at that time because boxing really needed that lift with Canelo Alvarez and then Triple G fighting the week later. I believe it was against Willie Monroe. Huge thing for boxing. More importantly, Canelo really took that time to shine, and huge move in his career. The next fight was his biggest fight since Floyd Mayweather, and probably his second biggest fight up to this point. Yeah, obviously in his career, because it was Floyd Mayweather, which was his biggest fight. That was against Miguel Cotto. Miguel Cotto, some thought, could give Alvarez boxing problems. Some thought he'd be able to hit him clean and hurt him. That definitely was not the case that November night at the Mandalay Bay. Canelo Alvarez absolutely dominated Miguel Cotto. And that was the first time in that fight that we saw Canelo Alvarez show true boxing savvy, and he was just really impressive. The best footwork of his career was shown in that fight. His counterpunching was off the charts. He had Cotto hurt several times in the fight, including a body shot in the 12th round that almost sent Cotto to the canvas, but somehow he weathered the storm. That was Canelo's best performance and got a lot of people thinking, man, he can really get in there and hang with the top dogs in this sport. Now, since the Miguel Cotto fight, Canelo Alvarez has had some questionable opposition. That started with Amir Khan. And a lot of people thought he would either fight a junior middleweight, take a warm-up fight at middleweight. No, instead he fights the welterweight, who, he wasn't even a good welterweight, guys. He was already chinny at welterweight. He made Khan move up to a Canelo weight, as we were calling it, which is about 155. And for the early part of the fight, Amir Khan was providing Canelo Alvarez a lot of problems, causing him, a lot of problems. And you really saw Canelo Alvarez struggling with Khan's boxing, but there was points in the third, fourth, fifth round. We saw Canelo Alvarez start depositing shots to the body, wearing Khan down, and eventually landing an overhand right that sent Khan crashing to the canvas, head smacking off the back of the canvas, and Canelo would score an unforgettable KO in the first boxing match at T-Mobile Arena. His next fight would be a year ago, September, against Liam Beefy Smith at Cowboy Stadium, a fight a lot of us thought that would be against Gennady Golovkin. When you saw Cowboy Stadium reserved, you saw Canelo was going to be fighting there. We thought that's when you get the Gennady fight, but unfortunately it was not, and Canelo made work of Liam Smith. And Liam Smith's not a bad boxer, guys, but Canelo boxed Liam Smith out of his shoes, sending him to the canvas a couple times with some brutal body shots, eventually finishing him with a hard, right hand to the body that floored Smith and put him out, could not get off the canvas. Canelo scored the stoppage victory. The fight after Smith in his most recent fight was against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., another questionable opponent that, quite frankly, we could have done without, but it was a huge fight weekend here this past May, here being I am in Las Vegas doing this video if you guys don't know. But it was a huge fight weekend here, brought in a big purse, big gate. Canelo Alvarez, we knew before the fight even happened that Chavez Jr. was going to struggle with Canelo. The weight really depleted Chavez. Not to mention, even if it wasn't the weight, Canelo Alvarez is so much more skilled than Chavez Jr. Boxed him out of his shoes for 12 rounds, got the decision victory, and after that fight is when they announced this fight with Gennady Golovkin. Now that we've looked at Canelo's road to this fight, let's take a look at Gennady Golovkin's road to this mega fight that he secured with Canelo Alvarez. Gennady Golovkin made his United States debut against Gregor Frasca back in the Turning Stone. I believe that was in the Turning Stone or Massachusetts. I have to double check on the location. But nonetheless, it was his American debut. American fight fans didn't really know who he was, but boy, that night in December when he floored Frasca. Not more than once in the fight too, but what was just more than a knockout ability. Yes, we love knockouts as fight fans, but what you saw from Triple G was just the overall killer instinct and all of his tools being used in one fight, cutting off the ring, using the jab, hooks to the body, brutalizing his opponent in every fashion possible. Made a great American debut, and it left a lot of people saying, hey, I want to see more of that guy. His next fight took place against Gabe Rosado, very formidable opponent, very formidable middleweight, that actually touched up Golovkin a little bit, but ultimately Golovkin would batter him around the ring and would cause Rosado's eye to bust open terribly, and would really beat up Rosado for, I think it was, let me double check the stats here, guys. I got the computer right in front of me with all these numbers on it. Goodness, so much preparation for the fight this week. Yeah, that fight against Gabe Rosado, the trainer actually wound up stopping the fight and saying that he was afraid his fighter was going to die in the ring if he let Rosado continue. Better off the trainer stopped it. After the fight with Rosado, he fought against Nobuhiro Ishida, really an unknown fighter to most fans. It was a fight that took place in Monte Carlo, a fight that HBO did not televise because, quite frankly, it wasn't a big enough fight. But what Golovkin did is he made quick work of him. And with that fight, he secured a fight with Matthew Macklin, who was known for his fight with Sergio Martinez before he fought Golovkin. But more importantly, Golovkin, when he fought Macklin, expanded his reach into Europe and really got the European boxing fans into the Golovkin brand. And when he fought Macklin, who was a formidable middleweight, he absolutely dominated the fight, sent him reeling really, really bad in certain points of the fight, and wound up flooring Matthew Macklin with a left hook to the body that none of us can forget. And that was one of those moments Obviously, after the Frasca fight, it left you saying, wow, you want to see more of that guy. But when he stopped Macklin, a middleweight that more of us knew, it left you saying, wow, you really, really have to see this guy, because now it's not just him defeating Frasca, it's him coming off with a highlight reel stoppage knockout of Matthew Macklin. After the Matthew Macklin fight, I believe, is when he fought Curtis Stevens. What a memorable fight that was. Before the fight, Curtis Stevens had a little online trash talk on Twitter, I remember, where he put up a gravestone of with Gennady Golovkin's initials engraved into it, and that would only lead to really more trouble for Curtis Stevens. Golovkin put him down, how many times in that fight, to be exact? I believe it was, twice? Yeah. Knocking him down, 2 times before the eighth and ninth round when they stopped the fight. He just pummeled Curtis Stevens around the ring, who is, by the way, another good middleweight. He's not a shaky, average middleweight like most people say. He brings a lot of power and was a legit opponent for Golovkin at that time in his career. After Curtis Stevens now is when he went back over to Monte Carlo again to fight a contender named Osumanu Adama, which I believe was a mandatory for his IBO title, I believe it was at the time. A fight HBO didn't pick up because nobody knew who the guy was. HBO didn't think it was worth it, but once again, he stopped him quick fashion, wound up, I believe it was TKO'd him, and let me take a look here, in the 7th round. Or no, was it in the 7th? No. That fight, he stopped that fight within about 2 or 3 rounds, excuse me. Now, after that fight, it was another quick stoppage from Golovkin. He moved on to a bigger test in Daniel Gill, who's an Australian middleweight. Came over. A lot of people thought this was going to be a tough fight, one of his toughest tests up to that point outside of Macklin. It wasn't really a tough test at all. Golovkin pummeled Daniel Gill around. I believe it was, for a round and a half? A round and a half before I believe he scored his first knockdown, and then he stopped his opponent in the 7th round. Several body shots hurt Gill, and he just could not get up and continue after Golovkin put him on the floor in the 7th round, scoring yet another victory. After the Gill fight, let me just make sure I have my ducks in a line here. Yes, was when he made his West Coast debut, and my first West Coast fight was Gennady Golovkin and Marco Antonio Rubio at the StubHub Center. The place was filled over capacity. It was. Against a veteran middleweight, Golovkin made quick work of him, knocking him out with an overhand left in the 2nd round. Pummeled Rubio from the start, but really asserting his dominance. And that was the night when he started calling out Canelo Alvarez and Miguel Cotto, made their names really associated with him. And you saw HBO kind of pushing that too, but that was the real, I thought, the coming out night for Gennady Golovkin. All the fans in the StubHub Center showing that boxing was alive and well, and that crowd was so alive for Triple G, it was nuts. After the Marco Antonio Rubio fight, he went back to Monte Carlo for the final fight that HBO would not televise, and that was against formidable middleweight Martin Murray, who I think gave Golovkin fits at times during their fight, but Golovkin would send him to the floor twice in the 4th round with body shots, and then Murray held his own. Jab kept Golovkin at a distance, but ultimately the beatings in round 10 and 11 would wear on Murray, and they would stop the fight in the 11th round TKO, I want to say that is. Yes, it was. And Golovkin retained his middleweight belt, scoring yet another stoppage. Then Golovkin would return back to the West Coast for another fight against Willie Monroe Jr., who many thought would provide Golovkin with problems because of his slick boxing ability. Did not happen. Golovkin cut the ring off very fast, took away any real boxing skills that Willie Monroe Jr. had, hurt his body early, landed big headshots late, and they would wind up stopping that fight. I was at that fight in attendance in Inglewood that night, and I believe that fight was stopped in the 6th round in front of a frenzied crowd at the LA Forum. It was a crazy night there, guys. That bout was followed up with a tough opponent in David Lemieux. He was fighting for the IBF world title. That was his first fight with selling out the entire Madison Square Garden. They opened up the upper and lower bowl. I believe tickets sold out within, an hour or so? I think 15,000 tickets were sold in 5 minutes that night. Really exciting night. People thought it was going to be a bigger clash than it was. Golovkin really that night pulled out a lot of his boxing tricks, I would say, out of his bag that a lot of people didn't know he had, because he was getting in the ring with a big, heavy puncher in David Lemieux. Kept David Lemieux at distance with a tough jab, eventually wearing Lemieux out, then sending shots to the body that would send Lemieux crumbling to the floor. You notice a similar, common theme here, at Triple G, is those body shots. Then when he, after those body shots landed a few times, he wound up having that fight stopped. I believe it was, the 8th round? 8th round TKO, when referee Steve Willis couldn't possibly make any more faces and stepped in and wound up stopping the fight. After that fight, he returned to, after he sold out MSG, he returned to LA one more time to face the mandatory challenger, WBC mandatory challenger at the time, Dominic Wade, which I was in attendance for that fight as well. And anybody who knows, who watched that fight, watched even beforehand, knew Dominic Wade was way out of his element, and Triple G absolutely dominated Dominic Wade in a fight most people thought was just a kind of a stay busy fight for a fight that would come coming September against Canelo Alvarez, but it was not. Instead, Triple G's next fight after Dominic Wade would take place against formidable welterweight Kell Brook, and that was an electric night in England. And by the way, for those of you out there that say, well, why didn't you say anything about Golovkin taking Brook, but you kind of said that Canelo taking Khan was questionable? Because Canelo taking Khan does not have a chin. Kell Brook is leaps and bounds ahead of Amir Khan in terms of a boxer, and it showed the night he fought Triple G. He really hit Triple G as hard as we've ever seen Triple G get hit in a fight up to that point. Triple G really fended off the storm, fended off Brook's attack, and wound up breaking Kell Brook's eye socket in that fight. Orbital bone in that fight. Wound up getting, was it a 5th or 6th round stoppage? Kell Brook's trainer, Dominic Inglewood, wind up waving the towel. It was halfway through the 5th round, to be exact. And then, after the Kell Brook fight, his most recent fight against Daniel Jacobs, which was no doubt his toughest fight to date. He did score a knockdown against Danny Jacobs in, the 3rd round of that fight. But boy, I actually scored that fight 6 rounds apiece, with Danny Jacobs winning, Gennady Golovkin winning with the knockdown. So it was a very close fight. I thought Golovkin looked gassed at points late in that fight. Danny Jacobs hit him with bigger shots than Golovkin had ever seen, but let's not forget Danny Jacobs was huge that night. Looked like he was weighing in at almost a cruiserweight limit that night, guys. But nonetheless, it was Triple G's toughest fight, and that is why we are here now. After Triple G defeated Danny Jacobs, he scored a unanimous decision in MSG. And now we are here this week, this coming Saturday night, with the mega fight on hand, guys. And boy, I can't wait for this fight between Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez. I will be back with a previews and predictions videos, guys. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page here at The Counter Punch with Carmen Colosimo. And that's it for this video, guys. Thank you once again, and stay tuned. I'm going to have more content coming your way. Thank you.